Hey, Tom here, Flip Anything USA. So look, today we're going to talk about creative financing, right? For a lot of you, that might mean just a very narrow definition, but it's far broader than that. And we're going to talk about the way that it is most commonly used and sometimes how it's a little bit misrepresented to go into things that really just aren't very practical and aren't almost never going to happen. I know because I've done just about everything out there. Been doing this for 43 years, had a lot of success. Got the most successful students on the internet. You can go to Flip Anything USA. Got a book. If you don't have my book, get my book, Wake Up and Smell the Real Estate. It's been a bestseller on Amazon, Audible, and Kindle. That'll be the best 10, 20 bucks you ever spend, that I promise you. Today I'm going to bring up creative financing in the ways that I've utilized it. Even some of my students have been very successful with creative financing. I'm going to just really try to give you a quick, fast education on it. And if you just got here, please hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. If it wasn't for creative financing, and that's very broad, owner financing in this case, I would never have been able to buy the first property that I bought when I was 19 years old. How it works. Let's talk about creative finance, how it works. Not typical, usually not exclusively, no banks, usually owner financed. And so let's talk about how that benefits people. Because it helps people that are young, right? Young, I'm going to describe young and really old too. And I'll tell you how. If you're young, you have no credit, right? You don't have to have bad credit, but these are the benefits. If you're young and no credit, or maybe if you're old and you have bad credit, or if you're just weak financially, creative financing, owner financing can be extremely important because it's not typical. You don't have to qualify for it. Usually it's just between the buyer and the seller. It's how you're creating this. You're proposing these things that will work for you and selling them to the person that's selling them that it will work for them too. And there's a lot of reasons that you can get really creative. And this is one of the beauties about real estate is that there really are no rules. The rules are whatever a buyer and seller agree to. Those are the rules. And it's all over the place and it's a fantastic thing. And I want you to watch it because like I say, in my own class, but even in my own class, these students of mine, some of them have made multi-millions on just a single deal. Others hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands. It's just in the last 3 years. So don't think this is some old stuff or the opportunities are gone. I promise you, these are the good old days. And so some of the benefits and how it works here, right? Because it's not going through a bank institution. They don't monitor every payment. They're not even checking your credit history. Some can. There's some that if they're going to have you owner finance, they can do that. But in general, you can get a pass on that. And the other thing is with creative financing, a lot of times you can create terms. Really, what we're talking about is terms here. Is you can create terms that may be transferable to somebody else that can absorb that quickly. And for you wholesalers out there, look, I don't like wholesaling. I mean, I've done some of it. Believe me, I made a fair amount of money in wholesaling. Big money is in investing. It's being to really have control of the asset. And if you understand creative finance and some of the things you can do, even if you can just own it for a month or two, that's better than wholesaling it and kind of giving the majority of the money away. You can get it tied up, own it, sell it to somebody, and make a lot bigger delta. The benefits are also very obvious, kind of going back to what I said here. Young, old, no credit, bad credit, the no qualifying, sometimes little or no cash, big deal. Little or no cash is a huge deal, right, for a lot of people. And I'm going to give you some examples of, in fact, one of my very, very first purchases for myself. I was able to walk in the door and buy my first property only about $500. That wasn't the purchase, that was the deposit that gave me the time and that gave me the opportunity to get the down payment. And so I'm going to talk about that really quick as well. But I'm also going to talk to you about one of my students, Eric, who did something that I've never even done. And this is what's cool. I got students that are starting to begin to open up things that Eric in my class, Eric got a first time ever, 0 down, 0% interest. In other words, day one, when he started making payments, every penny of that payment he made each month went to paying down the principal. There was no interest burning that payment up. In fact, he didn't even have a deposit. He was like 0 down. So beautiful thing. Let's get back to some of the benefits. The no qualifying aspect is huge because listen, you can have great credit and not qualify for something because maybe you already have a debt on your home. They look at what your debt to income ratio is. For some of you, that's a killer. The less and no cash, right? So let's talk about the less and no cash involved. And so let me jump away from this for a second. I'm going to go to Google Earth. I'm going to give you a perfect example. Now, this being a commercial building. So this would be my commercial building example, and I could use several. Let's just start with that one. I was 19 years old when I bought this commercial building right here. Now, I didn't qualify for a bank loan of the size that it would take to buy this thing. I bought this property for only $110,000, 2,400 square foot, kind of a commercial-ish building in the front, 3,400 square foot metal building in the back. Okay, bottom line is I got a 6-month escrow. Now this goes to creative financing. It's part of the terms. I got a 6-month escrow. That was the biggest thing, right? Because so the 6-month escrow, I put $500 down. I was getting it under market anyways, which, it wasn't exactly, it was my first deal. I knew I was getting a decent deal. I could make the numbers work for rent, that sort of thing. But it was that 6-month escrow. This was huge, and let's talk about that. The terms of this deal were I had to put $10,000 down, and then they would carry the note. Great terms for anybody. Most people, could put the 10 grand down. I could not. I was 19. I started a business. I didn't have the money. But I could come up with the 10 grand if they gave me 6 months, and if they let me use the building rent-free. And that's what they did. I put $500 down, or maybe it was $1,000, I can't remember, but I moved into the building, and I immediately rented out a little part of the building to somebody else. So I was getting rent from them. I no longer had to pay for renting the building that I had previously rented. Plus, I moved into the thing, so I didn't even have a rent to pay at that time because I was renting prior to that. So in 6 months, the $1,500 or so I saved, plus a little bit of rent from the guy that I rented a piece of the building to, I had more than the $10,000 down that I needed. That is a beautiful creative financing story. 19-year-old kid gets to buy a big building, $10,000 down that really was generated from the building itself. It's a beautiful thing, and that can be your story. And that is the kind of stories that most commonly associated with creative financing. If it's done right, it can be done. The sub 2 stuff, I already got that circled down here. Gigantic waste of time. Overly hyped is big opportunities. It's just a new trending term that really doesn't mean shit. Because I've done sub 2, and it can only work if there's actually a very big margin of profit to be made. And the only way I've ever stepped into it is because it was just a temporary thing. Because the way things are with sub 2, and I'll do another video on it, and I've done some on it already. You're basically breaching the contract with the bank, or you're causing somebody else to do so, and the ways of remedying it are ugly and not good. Just forget sub 2. I think there's less than 1% of 1% of deals maybe be done sub 2, and only a fraction of those are probably successful. But let's get on with what I do know works. Now, let's talk about commercial building I just described to you. Now let's talk about land. 0 down, 0 interest. So I'm going to go to a piece of land. This isn't actually the piece of land because the land I'm talking about, although this is another good deal. So here's land, right? There's just land everywhere. Land is the most typical thing that is owner financed, right? It's the most typical thing that's owner financed. Eric in my class, he's over in Louisiana. And like I said, this isn't the actual piece of land, but he got a beautiful piece of land and he got it owner financed. And he's the one who did something, like I said, I know that. Got it 0 down and 0 interest rate. But he did another thing that was really right. He got it significantly under market. Like I'm talking more than $500,000 under market. So he's going to make probably somewhere around $800,000 on that deal when it's all done and said. But again, that's an opportunity. Even if he bought it at fair market value, the fact that he didn't have to pay any interest rate at all, even if he paid full price for it, right? Which I don't really like to do. Everything I buy under market. Everything my students buy, they buy under market. But even if he had paid for it full price, the fact that he wouldn't have to pay any interest on it for the entire term of the loan could have made that could have been worthwhile. Go to flipanythingusa.com and get in here. Get into the mentorship. That's the most important link. You can also get into a webinar if you want to click on a webinar, but I urge you, number one, get in, apply for mentorship because that'll get you both. Apartments, right? Check this out. I could show you so many examples. Money made on apartments. Again, that's going to go back to creative finance. And let me go to show you one right now. Actually, I'm going to show you a bunch of apartments, but I'm going to try to narrow down just onto the one. Here we go. Yeah, there's this one right here. Okay, so now this is an apartment building. This was an unusual deal. This is a property that I bought from a professor and his wife at a big university. Here's the deal. I bought this building for $320,000. It was worth, probably $600,000 the day I bought it. But we were fighting over, they wanted $400,000. Okay, I wanted to pay $320,000. The prevailing interest rate at that time was about 7% interest. But the guy's like, Tom, I want to sell it, but she's got to hear $400,000. And I said, okay, let's work the numbers. Instead of $320,000, at 7%, which was the rate at the time, we said, okay, let's make it $400,000. This is all owner carried at 3% interest. This made a world of difference. This all of a sudden made the payment much lower. It made, for me to hold the term for a long time, it made it better. When I sold the property, I had a note that was assumable, that I got to charge a premium. I got to charge them an assumption fee for taking over the note, and it made it even more of a lucrative deal for me than as if I actually bought it for the full $320,000 that I wanted to pay at 7%. I actually came out to be much more advantageous for me to pay $80,000 more with a lower interest rate, because now I had a loan that could be assumed by somebody else, that I got a premium on that sale. So again, there's another example. Owner financing, okay? Owner financing, even though on this one I paid a little bit higher price, but I made it up for it right here. It's 3% interest, right? Now let's talk about house owner carry 3% interest. I can actually do several of these. So now take a look at this property above my head. Now, first of all, I want to tell you something. I bought this, which I used to, this zone, I called this three cosses, right? And I called it three cosses because, see that? There's a house, okay? And then there's another house over here in the front, and then they built a third house to connect it all together. So take a look at this. See that? How that? This is kind of cute and funny story. See that? There's a little house back here. You can see the pitch of the roof. Okay, now this is really funny. I got to take you on the street to see this one. Oh yeah, here it is. Look at, here's the other house. See the pitch of the roof? That pitch goes up and then it goes back down into the house. So house here, house in the back corner that I showed you, and then this was connected. If you looked it up in the property records, you'd see that an entity called Three Casas, 1, 2, 3, owned it all, and of course I owned that entity. But let's get to this. I owned this house you see here, this house, I own this piece of land, and I bought this restaurant. So basically I had 5 properties in a row. All these blue dots are all properties that I've owned in the past and or still own. There's a bunch of them. But let's get to this again, because I want to get to these terms that are so important for you to understand for owner financing. These people wanted to sell this place. It had been converted from a house into a restaurant. One of my tenants that rented from here, she had a habit of walking from here to the place and getting some lunch. She walked over and she found a note on the door that said, hey, we're closed and we're going to sell the place. If there's any issues, here's our phone number. She immediately called me, said, hey, Tom, they want to sell this place. I was over there in a flash, I called the number, I made the deal, and I bought this property. Now let's talk about creative financing. I bought this property, I believe I bought it with like $30,000 down, $720,000 I paid for the property, but I got an interest rate of interest only. Just no, it wasn't, I think it was interest only. 3% interest, 3% interest. I think there actually may have been a little bit of principal. It was like a 40-year term or something. Anyway, so I had this very long-term note at 3% interest, and when I bought it, they were kind of sharp. They weren't going to let it be open where it could be, anybody could qualify. An agent got involved, and he protected them like he should, but they did allow it to be owner financed with that it could be assumable with their permission. And so that's what I did. I bought this property. I paid $720,000. I sold it for $930,000. Again, $30,000 out of pocket, and I make $200,000. That's a nice spread, and it was a really interesting experience owning a restaurant for a short while. Land, that was the house. Apartments, I already showed you. Land, I explained to you, the zero down. I used Eric for that example. Let's talk about example with banks. That's what I'm going to get into right now. This is a school that I bought, and this has really nothing to do with the deal. There's really a hell of a story around the deal, because I bought this property. I got an amazing deal on the property. I'm not even going to get into that. It's the terms that I used to buy it that should be of interest to you. So I'm going to take you over to another property. This is a school. This was a school when there was nothing else out here. This was out in the suburbs. In fact, what you're looking at here is this is where the school bus used to drive here, right? Get the kids lined up along the street. And they would climb in the buses, then the buses would pull out. This tiny little bit of parking you see right here, that was for the faculty and staff, the principal, the teachers. Over here, even though it's not obvious, but this looks like parking, this was the high school gym, okay? Where all these cars are now, that was the gym. Long story short, got into this deal, I bought this property, and when I bought it, I was selling another property that I was making, I don't know, $600,000-$800,000 profit on, but I did a 1031, and I have great video on 1031 exchanges. If you don't know what those are, even there's some different kinds of 1031s you should be aware of if you don't know. And I bought this property. Now let's talk about how I bought this property. And I'll go back to the iPad over here. We're talking about being the high school, right? So I'm underlining that. Now, what I did was I bought this property for like 1 million. I think I either got it for 1,050,000 or 1,125,000. It was something like that. But I had over $1 million. I know what it is. I think I paid $1.1 million. I think I paid $1.1 million for it. But I had $1.05 million that I was using from a 1031. So in other words, I had the sale of another property. I didn't get to touch the money, but I rolled that money directly into the purchase of this high school. And now the significance of that is huge because by the 1031, I was able to defer the gains so I wouldn't have to pay taxes on it at that time. I'll pay it down the road when I sell this property. What I'm getting at here is I basically put 95% down. But what was creative on this now was that with the bank, the deal that I made with the bank is that the day that I closed and I had $1 million equity in a $1.1 million property, I arranged with them to have this 80% drawdown note. So basically what that meant was I had roughly $840,000 like a line of credit. In other words, it's a drawdown note. A lot of people don't even know what I'm talking about, but imagine having a line of credit that you can pull money. Line of credit generally lets you pull money down and you can put it back, or that's a revolving line of credit, what we call an RLOC, right? Revolving line of credit, not just a LOC, line of credit. But this is a little different. This is called a drawdown note because they just wanted money to be borrowed, right? That's what the bank's money. They make their money on loaning money. From day one, as soon as I closed that deal, I had a checkbook that had $860,000 in it. And with the power of that checkbook, the day I closed that, I remember I wrote a check $400,000 down to buy another property, $400,000 down to buy another building, and I made millions of dollars on both of those as well. Between these three transactions, there's probably $10 million made. And again, this is creative financing, not the typical creative financing that's just owner financing. This is creative financing that's involving a bank, utilizing the tax laws that are out there for us investors to use. I'm going to give you another example on some apartments that a little bit different, but creative, right? This was a 20,000 square foot apartment building, actually across the street from the one that I showed you earlier. Totally different purchase, different transaction. I actually I bought this building here, 20,000 square foot. I bought this building here, roughly 12,000 square foot. This one had 13 units. This one had 21 units in it. The creative financing on this one was quite different. I was already getting a steal on these two buildings. Between the two of them, I was paying $400,000. Well, there was a guy in front of me and this is one of the things you're going to learn if you're fortunate enough to get in my class, and I urge you to come in here, go to flipanythingusa.com and fill out the mentorship. Just apply for mentorship. They have a call with me. What I want to get at here with you is this building, somebody was ahead of me on it, right? In other words, but they kept screwing around, and you'll learn in the class what I did to take this away. But in the end, I got this property, and instead of paying $400,000 for it, because one of the things the banks were very worried about back then was that they didn't want to get it back. A lot of banks foreclosed on property, probably kind of like what's going to be happening in 2025. We're going to have a lot of tough stuff coming for these types of properties. And so there's a lot of opportunity, which is really a good time for you to get involved with real estate right now. Just get your skills now before the crash. Then you'll make all the money. On this one, what I did was I made a deal with them. They really wanted to make sure the property was going to be fixed up. And so guess what? The guys that actually lost it from me, they get some credit. They proposed, they go, how about lower the price from $400,000, which was already a steal, to $340,000. They go, and we'll put $60,000 in it right away. Well, they were weak buyers. They couldn't really do it. And so they proposed it. The bank had accepted it. I was there saying, push these guys out of the way. They're not going to make it. They're not going to do it. And finally they said, you know what, Tom, you got the money? I said, yep. I gave them the down payment. We made a deal. I bought it right away. They sold it to me for $340,000 for both of these buildings. That came out to $10,000 a unit, total of 34 units for $340,000. I made damn near $1.5 million just on these two properties alone. Put that in, bought other property that made me tens of millions more. And so that is the power of creative financing, and asking for things that people just think they ask for a price and I make them an offer and then we buy it. And it can be much better than that, okay? It can be a little more complicated because you make it that way, but not terribly complicated, and you can make a fortune in it. And so anyways, again, I left this here at the bottom, sub 2, giant waste of time. Please don't waste your time with this bullshit. I've done some sub 2 deals, but they're very few of them, and they're usually people that are in desperate circumstances that owe more than the property's worth. And I've heard Pace Morby say, equity will come, equity will go, but the cash will always flow. That's not true. Total ridiculous statement. Don't want you getting wrapped up in sub 2. I would never let a friend do it, and the people that come to me, when I explain it to them, they quickly understand why. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed that. Listen, if you like what you heard, let me know in the comments. Please make a comment. Yeah, so anyways, thanks for watching. If you get a chance, please get the book, Wake Up and Smell the Real Estate, but go to flipanythingusa.com and go right up here. Apply for mentorship. Of course, get the book is very important, but any of these 3 links, these 3 links can change your life. You could be a millionaire in a year or two, like some of my students have already become. You can check out my students here. These are videos, by the way, and they'll tell you in their own words how their lives have been changed since being mentored by me, and it started with getting the book. Hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. You don't want to miss my channel. I've been doing it for years.